In the words of A Tribe Called Quest back in 1991, we've got the jazz, we've got the jazz. What is good, y'all? It's your boy Mixtape Moth. If you are rocking with this content, please make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, as all that love is really appreciated. But today, I'm going to be talking about the 10 best jazz rap albums of all time. Now, jazz rap, it's one of the main subgenres in hip hop, and it's been around since the late 80s, but it really came into full swing in the early to mid 90s. And today I'm gonna go over 10 albums that I feel really get to the essence of that jazz rap sound. Sure, you're gonna notice some other production elements embedded into these albums, stuff like soul, funk, and boom bap. But at the end of the day, these albums just feel more like jazz rap than anything else. But getting right into this list, starting at number 10, I have Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Now, this 2015 album is regarded as a modern day classic, and it's one of Kendrick's best. The thing that always stood out the most to me was the jazzy undertones to the production. Now, there was some live instrumentation and elements of funk and neo soul as well, but it was heavily jazz influenced, and Kendrick even recruited some jazz legends to assist them on the journey. And there was quite a variety to the style of jazz production too. Like on the opening track, Free, you had that breezy cinematic soundscape, but then on a song like You had more of the darker, moodier jazz production. A track like For Sale had an otherworldly, sublime quality to it, and then you had the upbeat horns on the pro-black anthem, Alright. While this may not have been my favorite Kendrick album personally, it's easily his jazziest, and I thought it was dope that he tried to reintroduce the jazz rap sound to a younger audience, or to the masses, for those who may not have been familiar with those classic jazz rap sounds of the 90s. At number 9, I have De La Soul's Soul-Buhloone Mindstate. So this 1993 album was the group's most experimental, most psychedelic, and the jazziest. It was also their last project with the great Prince Paul on the board. Let's take a gorgeous track like I Am, I Be. You had an impeccable, multi-layered beat, and just elevated positive rhymes. A single like Break It Dawn, it just really encapsulated the lush and sparkling jazz rap sounds of the early 90s. Patty Duke with Guru had that quirky jazz rhythm, and while I Be Blowin' was a straight up Maceo horn solo. You had other highlights like In the Woods, which had some mystical horns. There was more brass and more storytelling on a track like 3 Days Later, and you also had the rugged jam Ego Trippin', which was a great fusion of jazz and boom bap. I will say that the jazz may have been more subtle than what you would have gotten on a Tribe or Roots album at the time, but this was easily De La's jazziest. At number 8, I have Bahamadia's Collage. So Bahamadia, coming out of Philly, is one of the more underrated female MCs in rap history, and this debut album was also one of the more slept on releases of that incredible year, 1996. Now, not only was Bahamadia catching wreck vocally on every track, but this album had stellar jazz rap production. Let's take the opening song, Wordplay, with that quirky jazz beat from Guru, and a record like Spontaneity. It doesn't get much more blissful and euphoric than this track. How about the twinkling pianos on the Primo-produced Rugged Raw, or the soothing melodic sounds on the single You Know How We Do. You also had the tranquil sounds of Dijon featuring the Roots, and there was also a grimier jazz cut like Total Wreck, also produced by Guru. At number 7, I have the Pharcyde-Bizarre Ride to the Farside. Now, this 1992 album is considered to be a classic and one of the jazziest albums in West Coast hip hop. Honestly though, one could have easily substituted this with Souls and Mischief's 1993 to Infinity, because both projects are a great representation of West Coast jazz rap. But this Farside album was very carefree, fun, and eccentric. You had Jay Swift on the boards. Some standouts included the brisk boom bap banger, Oh Shit. The Soulflower remix had those funky horns And you got some mesmerizing keys on a track like on a DL. There was the slow rolling weed anthem, Pass the Pipe, the groovy sounds on a track like Other Fish, and of course, the mega classic single, Passing Me By. Yeah, this was an entertaining project that sounded unlike anything prior that was released on the West Coast. For number 6, I have Common's Resurrection. Now, this 1994 release is regarded by many as a classic Common album, and it's also his jazziest, possibly next to like Water for Chocolate. You had No ID on the boards and some of Common's rawest and wittiest raps to date. We could talk about the alluring piano loop on the opener, Resurrection, or that 5-mic single, I Used to Love Her, which is one of his greatest songs. Or we can get into that quirky sample and jazzy bass line on Watermelon, and also the horns and that ODB sample on Nothing to Do. Rich Man vs. Poor Man, it was another highlight, and he also had those bright and zany pianos on a record like Maintain It. For number 5, I have Gangstarr-'s Daily Operation from '92. Look, although there has always been a heavy jazz presence on all Gangstarr albums, Daily Operation, it might have been the jazziest. I suppose one could substitute this with Guru's Jazzmatazz Volume 1, but let's focus on those slower rolling horns and storytelling on X-Girl to Next Girl or the '92 interlude. Yeah, I know it's not a song, but that piano loop was incredibly addictive. Of course, there was the punchy anthem Take It Personal, as well as I'm the Man, which introduced both J. Rue the Damager and Lil Dat from Group Home to the rap scene. You also had a track like Too Deep with its chunky horn riff and more rugged up-tempo gems like The Illest Brother and BYS. While it's not my favorite Gangstarr album, but it did really fit that jazz rap category the most. At number 4, I have The Roots' Do You Want More? This 1995 release was an underrated Roots album, and in my opinion, the jazziest sounding of them all. Philadelphia Half-Life would be a close second, though. Let's take the blue tinted cover art for starters. I mean, that really personified the vibe of a dimly lit jazz lounge to the fullest. You had the catchy single Proceed with its memorable hook, and the off-kilter sounds on Distortion to Static with Malik B. Also, if you like Malik B's rapping, you got a lot of rapping from him on this project. An example of some of his standout flows were found on Mellow My Man. The ill back and forth between the two over this laid-back groove was so damn suave, so damn cool. Even has some experimentation with mellow R&B on tracks like Lazy Afternoon and Silent Treatment. There were straight up raw jazz rap cuts too, like As a Woman, Remain Calm, and That Scat, and all of these had that idiosyncratic and lively quality. At number 3, I have Digable Planets' Blowout Combs. So either this 1994 album or their debut Reach In could have fit this slot. And while one could argue that their debut album, was more critically acclaimed and had higher highs, I always felt like Blowout Comb was more cohesive and a little more polished as an effort. I mean, the jazz samples were smoother and more intricately laced into the backdrop. You also had elements of soul and funk sprinkled in with some live instrumentation. It's a project that you could put on to fall asleep to, not because it was boring, it was just because it was such a tranquil and mellow listen. But there was also some pro-black and socially conscious material on it as well, and even more abstract record. To me, their track Black Ego, it's a jazz rap masterpiece. Like, I feel one would be hard pressed to find a song in this subgenre to be quite as spellbinding. You had those funky horns on a track like Dog It and that breezy lush sample on Jettin'. Both were total vibes. A record like Borough Check, it not only bigged up their borough of Brooklyn, but it also sampled from the jazz legend Roy Ayers. There were some semi-aggressive tracks too, like Ninth Wonder and Graffiti, the latter with J. Rue the Damager. But aside from Black Ego, my second favorite would have to be For the Corner. It just made you feel like you were lounging on a New York block on a sunny day. The sax lines were elite, and that glistening guitar, it was everything. At number 2, I have Pete Rock and CL Smooth's The Main Ingredient. Now, this 1994 release, it was not held in the same light as Mecca and Soul Brother, for real. But it was a strong follow-up and an underrated album from this duo. I always thought that it took some of the rugged, up-tempo sounds that you had on Mecca and updated them with some polished loops and soul samples. The end result was some smoothed out, head-nodding production from the Chocolate Boy Wonder and those buttery smooth flows from CL Smooth. In my opinion, this project was like the embodiment of jazzy, mid-tempo hip-hop in the mid-90s. Some highlights included the sparkling opener in the house and Caramel City. Now, Caramel City had that soothing, otherworldly feel. I Get Physical was another favorite, primarily due to that Kane sample, the funky piano, and those dusty drums. You also had those far away, captivating sounds on a track like All the Places. I Gotta Love was another standout, as well as Worldwide with those hypnotic vibraphones. There was the breezy single Tell Me and more Roy Ayers sampling on a track like Searchin'. And you had a joyous record like Take You There. And at the number 1 spot, I have A Tribe Called Quest's The Low End Theory. This 1991 album is a landmark hip-hop classic, a pinnacle of jazz rap, and really a top 10 rap album of all time. I'd say it has stayed in my top 5 consistently for a long time. Now, I know some view Midnight Marauders as their masterpiece. That's cool and all, but I felt Low End Theory, that was the one. It was such a highly influential album that set a new standard for jazz rap in the 90s, and I've yet to hear a jazz rap album eclipse it, or one that was better, quite frankly. I'm sorry, Roots. I'm sorry, De La. I'm sorry, Digable Planets. There was so much creativity and positive lyrical expression that we had from Q-Tip throughout, along with those punchy, witty verses from Fife. Let's talk about the drums and bass line on Excursions, or that raw bass guitar on Bugging Out, combined with Fife Dog's animated 5-mic verses, or the velvety jazz sounds on a track like Butter. Show Business with Lord Jamar, Sadat X, and Diamond D was a lively posse cut with a lot of knowledge being dropped. And I can't think of a cooler vibe-heavy track than Vibes and Stuff. You also had the flawless back and forth rapping on that classic single, Check the Rhyme, not to mention with its multiple samples, the horns, and those crisp drums. It's the embodiment of a classic song. And to close it out, a track like We've Got the Jazz was the ideal expression of jazz rap. That saxophone, it was everything. So those are my top 10 jazz rap albums of all time. Some honorable mentions could include The Large Professors, the LP. Really, if you haven't heard that Large Professor album, it is a hidden gem with a ton of really fantastic jazz rap instrumentals. Also, Diamond D, Stunts, Blunts, and Hip Hop, Organized Confusion, Stress, Guru's Jasmine Taz 1, Souls of Mischief 93 to Infinity, The Roots, Illadelph Half-Life, Queen Latifah's Black Rain, and Showbiz and AG's Runaway Slave. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section. It's your boy Mixtape Muff. I'm signing out. As always, it's peace and blessings. One.